Well, let's take a look at what's making headlines in the French papers today. Alison Sargent is here with me. Now, Alison, we're going to start with that verdict that we had yesterday in the Merah trial. It is being discussed in a lot of the French papers, but perhaps not as much as we might have expected.
That's right, Sharon. French papers are reacting very calmly to this verdict yesterday. It's in all of the papers, but it's not the top story on any of the front pages. You can see in Le Parisien, it's all the way down on page 12. They talk about 2 convictions, 1 acquittal. Abdelkader Merah, the brother of Mohamed Merah, was both convicted and acquitted. He was convicted of terrorist conspiracy, but acquitted of complicity in his brother's murders of Jewish children and police officers. Now, this muted reaction from the press seems to mirror the scene in the courtroom yesterday as it was described by reporters. As Libération writes, despite a suffocating tension, the courtroom emptied in absolute calm. And the paper goes on to say perhaps that is the way to determine the justice of a verdict. Now, there had been some concerns for some that the court would judge Merah too harshly because these attacks had generated so much public outrage and disgust. Left-wing paper Libération, though, seems relieved that the court wasn't influenced by public pressure and didn't convict Abdelkader Merah on all charges just to make someone pay for what happened.
But the right-wing paper Le Figaro, it doesn't seem as pleased with the verdict.
That's right, they're not. As I said, the press is muted, so this is kind of a subtle difference, but if we look at this article from Le Figaro, they point out the difference in how the court treated Abdelkader Merah and the other man who was on trial, Feta Malki, who provided a bulletproof vest and a weapon to Mohamed Merah. Both men were given a chance to speak before the court, and Merah's brother repeated simply that he had nothing to do with his brother's actions. Meanwhile, Feta Malki apologized to the victims, he asked for their forgiveness, and said he is not a terrorist. And Le Figaro, which is a right-wing paper, as I said, doesn't seem to understand why the court seemed to listen to Merah, who has never expressed any remorse for what happened, but not to Malki, to whom they gave a 14-year sentence.
The situation in Spain, the Catalonia crisis, that's making a lot of the front pages today.
It is. Staying with Le Figaro, we can take a look at that paper's front page. They say the noose is tightening around the Catalan separatists after those 8 ousted government members were taken into custody yesterday. Le Figaro is really going all out, it has to be said, against the pro-independence camp, in particular leader Carles Puigdemont. In the paper's editorial, they call his fleeing to Brussels a, quote, masquerade and a farce, and they say Puigdemont should really go back home and take responsibility for what's happening. Or, better yet, Le Figaro actually suggests that he seek asylum at the Venezuelan embassy, and become the Catalan Julian Assange. So a reference to the WikiLeaks founder who is still holed up at the Venezuelan embassy in London.
Okay, well, let's go back to France. We had a new tax unveiled here yesterday. The pro-business papers, they're not too happy with it.
They're not. This tax is called the contribution exceptionnelle, or special contribution. It asks businesses to pay 3% of their dividends to the government, so taking some money that would normally be going to shareholders. This tax replaces one that former President François Hollande tried to pass, but that was ultimately deemed unconstitutional. So for pro-business paper L'Opinion, this new tax, like the old one, amounts to stealing. That's what you can see in this cartoon here on their front page. Those are, you might recognize the Paris Metro, those are business leaders waiting for the Metro at the Ministry of Finances. It's the CEO of car company Renault on the left, and then the head of France's employer union, and finally the CEO of French energy company Engie. So they're waiting for the Metro, and you can see there's an announcement coming over the PA system, and it says, "Attention CEOs, so as not to tempt the government, please close your bags and pay close attention to your personal belongings."
Okay, well, you've one last story for us this morning, Alison, to do with the sharing of some very personal belongings, and I'll let you explain.
That's right, very personal belongings. This has to do with sperm. Actually, France's sperm banks are sounding the alarm about a shortage of sperm donations. Over 1,000 couples sign up to receive donations every year, but only about 250 men donate sperm every year, so the numbers do not line up. It's not enough. Yesterday, France's sperm banks launched a campaign to encourage not only sperm, but also egg donation. This young man you see in Le Parisien today, his Elliot, he is 27 years old.
They're on the prompter.
He's a medical student who is struck by the stories of women struggling with infertility, who he met as an intern while he was at the hospital. He has become a very strong advocate of sperm donation, and he even came up with a clever slogan that he has hung up in the rooms of men who are donating sperm. It says, "They need your hand."
Okay, we leave it there, Alison, with that slightly unusual appeal for donors. So that's our French review of the papers. Alison will be back with us shortly. Do stay tuned to France 24.